The Babylon Project was our last best hope for sci-fi, a self-contained podcast 1 hour long located on the internet, a place of fun and discussion for Babylon 5 fans everywhere, a shining beacon in cyberspace, all alone in the night. It was the dawn of the 20th anniversary of Babylon 5, the year the Great War to free Bab 5 came upon us all. This is the story of the last of the Babylon podcast. The year is 2016. The name of the place is the Babylon Project Podcast.
This is Maggie Egan, your ISN news anchor, and you're listening to the Babylon Project podcast.
Hello there, Babylon 5 fans. This is Raul Weber and Jim Arrowwood with another fun episode of the Babylon Project podcast. This is Raul, and I'm joined here tonight with my good friend Jim Arrowwood. How are you tonight, my friend?
Great.
So tonight, what episode are we talking about?
Well, tonight we are Season 2, Episode number 11, All Alone in the Night.
This, for me, has always been a strange episode. Not as, well, of course, you've got a cautionary stream, but I'm not talking about that.
Right.
I'm talking about the memory and the reflection that this episode has always caused with me.
Ah.
And I don't know why. For some reason, it's like I think, oh, this one.
Ah.
And do I watch it, or do I just skim through it, or do I just skip it entirely?
Now, if you are a true fan, you watch it, whether you like it or not, you have to watch it.
Exactly. And my reaction every single time I do watch it is, oh, wow, this was an amazing episode. What was I thinking? I've never figured that out.
It does have a lot of neat stuff in it, but probably a little later on I will have a question for you. Perhaps you can clarify for me.
Before we get there, let's go ahead and get started with a summary, if you would, my friend.
Very well.
Archive. Access. Initiated.
While investigating some unusual astronomical activity, Sheridan is captured by an unknown alien race that tortures and performs experiments on him. He is also subjected to being forced to fight other races that appear to be under the influence of the aliens. After defeating a Drazi opponent, Sheridan is forced to fight a Narm named Talon. Sheridan manages to incapacitate Talon rather than kill him and removes a device from him that is making him aggressive. Together, Sheridan and Talon plan their escape. While aboard the alien ship, Sheridan has a dream involving some of his crewmates and Ambassador Kosh. Later, Sheridan learns that he has actually had telepathic contact with the Vorlon. Delenn is called to attend a meeting of the Grey Council, of which she has been a member. Hedron informs her that she will no longer be serving on the council because of her transformation into being half human, half Minbari. She is further concerned that she has been replaced by Neroon of the Warrior caste. Delenn is sent back to Babylon 5 to continue her role as ambassador. As Delenn learns of Sheridan's situation, she tells Ivanova that he has been taken by the Stribes, and helps Ivanova and the EAS Agamemnon track the ship to the Stribe home world. When Ivanova orders the aliens to release their prisoners, they comply by releasing them into open space. However, Sheridan and Talon manage to escape in a life pod. Back on the station, Sheridan meets with General Haig, who wants to know if the Babylon 5 staff is loyal to Earth. Haig further explains that the assassination of President Santiago is just one incident in a much wider conspiracy to seize power on Earth. The episode closes with Sheridan in a meeting with his command staff. Well, there it is.
Well, there it is.
Yes.
That has so much packed into such a short time on that summary. It's going to be fun to deconstruct.
Yeah, it is. It is. There is an awful lot going on in this episode. A lot of bouncing back and forth, trying to figure out what's going on.
But before we start deconstructing,
yes,
who did we have on this show tonight?
Character, files, opened.
Okay, on our guest star list, mostly were people we've discussed before. One new face that appeared just this one time was a gentleman named Nick Corey.
Also known as Jesus Garcia.
Yeah, that's his real name, as a matter of fact. He's from Cuba, and he played Lieutenant Carlos Ramirez.
Mm-hmm.
It's his only appearance on the show, and there really isn't a whole lot other that he's been in, at least in as far as sci-fi is concerned.
Not in the way of science fiction, but boy, has he been a busy man.
Yes, he's been in a lot of stuff.
It looks like from the early 80s, and he's still working and busy today.
Yes. And we also got another visit from Marshall Teague, this time as he's credited in the opening credits as Narn, but we find out that he is actually Talon.
Talon.
Our first encounter with Talon, one of my favorite characters.
He was a favorite of a lot of the fandom.
Yes. Robin Sachs returns, reprises his role as Hedron, and John Vickery is back once again as Neroon.
Right.
And in the special appearance, we have Robert Foxworth returning as, once again, General Haig.
General Haig.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of goes back to what I was saying before, as far as, I don't know why I start out with such a misimpression or misguided impression of the episode before. Because this is the perfect storm of guest stars.
Yeah.
I mean, Marshall Teague, definitely one of the beloved guest stars. Robin Sachs was always well-liked. John Vickery, Mr. Foxworth. You can, the only person missing is Bester.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, I'm going to be the first to admit the confusion is with me. It's not the episode.
Yeah. I'm sure the characters didn't miss Mr. Bester, though.
No. Though I guess he, well, maybe not specifically by name, but at least by reference, he does come up in a way in Absentia.
Yes, he does.
Toward the end, and I'm sure we'll bring that up.
Right.
But rather than going to the end, let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
Initiating plot analysis.
Delenn, it seems, is being called back to the Great Council.
Yeah.
And at this point, we see one of the grand themes of Babylon 5 introduced. She has to face the consequences of her actions.
Yes.
She went against the Great Council's instructions, and she tells Lanier flat out, I made my choice, and now I have to face the consequences.
Yeah. She does try to kind of laugh it off a little bit. Well, not laugh it off, but she does kind of try to trivialize it to Lanier.
Right. But I think that's more for his sake than for her in any way.
Oh, yeah. She's definitely worried.
Worried enough that she's preparing for her inability to return.
Yes.
And that's the main point of it. Even when you're doing the right thing, there very well may be some unpleasant results, and Straczynski and the show in general just does not dance around that truth.
Well, and as we know, that's a very simple fact of life. Whenever you do something, there is going to be a consequence. It doesn't always necessarily mean it's going to be a negative consequence, but if there is a negative consequence, well, you kind of have to face up to it.
He doesn't whitewash it.
No.
And I think that's one of the things that fans have always respected about the show. Now, from here we switch over to CNC, and we do get a question about the show answered.
Yes.
In particular, and I remember this is like people were wondering, when are we going to see the Raiders and their cool little triangular fighters again? And it's made clear about halfway, because we're about the midpoint of the second season. It's made clear that the Raiders are gone, and yep, they're gone for good.
Yeah, no more Raiders. No more giant Raider ships. Those were kind of cool.
Those were definitely cool. The carrier.
Yeah. And Sheridan, it seems like, needs a little flight time.
Yeah. And, this is a little bit different than Sinclair. Sheridan does want to get out of the station, but this is a different attitude, different approach than what we had seen with Sinclair. In Sheridan's case, he makes it clear he has to have the flight time or he's not going to get his flight pay.
Right.
He's not out trying to get himself killed.
Well, yeah, he's not intentionally trying to get himself killed.
In fact, as he puts it, what can go wrong?
Yeah, and as soon as he says that, something is going to go wrong. There's no other way to look at it.
Very, very wrong.
Yeah.
So the last part of the setup, we see some Narn fighters getting the heck blown out of them by something.
Yeah.
A ship we've never seen before.
Or we'll ever see again. It's a very strange design. It looks almost like a giant fish.
Mm-hmm. It's, very organic in its design. So
yeah,
there's an assumption there that they're fairly advanced.
Mm-hmm.
But as you say, it's something that's going to come and go. But more important, Marshall Teague. Yay.
Yeah, we get Marshall Teague again.
Of all the people on Babylon 5, more than anyone else, if my wife could have an autographed photo, that's the man.
Ah.
As far as she's concerned, he is the ultimate babe of the show.
Yeah.
Even over Jason Carter.
And even now, I don't know if you've noticed he's pretty active on Facebook and Twitter.
Uh-huh.
And on Tuesdays, we get hashtag Teague Tuesday.
Oh.
Where he will post a lot of different pictures and things from himself.
Uh-huh.
From various properties and things that he's worked on. And it's kind of neat.
So he keeps a lot of contact with the fans. I mean, not just Babylon 5 fans, but his whole career fans.
No, he's very friendly, and he seems to be a very nice person.
Which is fantastic because you look at his resume, Babylon 5, a half dozen, 10 guest appearances.
Yeah.
But this guy's got some star power.
Yes.
So that's great.
Oh, he's been in a number of things. And I was watching, as I was watching the episode again, I thought it was really neat how the makeup that they do, and I know we've discussed this before,
mm-hmm.
The makeup allows for us being able to recognize the actor.
Yeah.
You don't just blend in. I mean, it's not like, oh yeah, well, you've seen one Narn, you've seen them all.
Right.
They are definitely individuals.
Have you seen, and I don't know which season disc it is, but it's on the special features of one of the season discs. If you've got the DVDs, there is a featurette on the makeup and the makeup process and how they do it.
Oh.
And it shows you exactly how and why they get that effect. And it sort of connects to how they are able to do so much makeup, so complete makeup so quickly, because they had to do a lot of innovation to be able to get the number of aliens that they have on screen at one time.
Yeah.
Doing it by prosthetics, making them actually look like real aliens, not people in a mask.
Yeah.
And do it within a budget.
I have the DVDs. I'll have to look for that. I don't remember if I've watched that before or not. Most likely I have.
I would certainly follow up on it. You will truly enjoy it. In fact, it actually focuses on Marshall Teague getting into the Talon makeup.
Oh, how cool!
So you'll definitely like it.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the show, though.
Yep.
Delynn, as you had said, she was trying to make light of it to Lanier, but when she starts passing back her diaries and her notes and everything to him, that kind of defeats her brevity, shall we say. He understands something's up, and he makes it absolutely clear he will never desert Delin
Right.
as long as he's got life.
Yeah. And this relationship that they have is far more than just a work relationship, at least from his point of view. Now, I don't know if it's because hindsight is 2020. We find out later on exactly where Lanier is coming from, but, this is more than just simple loyalty or boss-employee or something like that.
Oh, and it definitely follows that direction. I think both sides it's just the nature in which it is beyond a work relationship that is so very different.
Right.
And this is basically setting up season 5.
Yes. Well, General Haig checks in, and
General Haig checks in.
Yep, and Susan calls Sheridan and lets him know that General Haig is on his way and is going to be early.
And yes, Sheridan seems a little concerned.
Right. Well, and then he, when Ivanova questions him on this, I'm sure that it's legitimate. Why don't you let me know when a person of this stature is coming by? And Sheridan tries to explain to her, well, it's informal, it's not supposed to be a big deal, and it is a private matter.
Right.
Now,
right.
The chief of staff is going to travel halfway across the galaxy on a private matter?
Well, I think by the end of the episode we'll see that he that's an accurate statement.
Yes.
He traveled halfway across the galaxy on a private matter, and I don't think the matter could get much more private than that.
No.
At least in a semi-professional discussion.
Well, and see, as I watched the episode, I knew something serious was coming down, especially under those circumstances.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a big setup episode. It may not, well, it is an arc episode, but I kind of call it less an arc episode and more of a pivot episode, because so much of what happens in the main arcs pivots off of the events of this episode.
Yeah.
Now, on a lighter note, we do find out the baseball's still big.
Yeah, it must be. And
yeah, what is this with Mars having a pro team?
Yeah, well, I suppose, they would necessarily need to have one in order to keep the masses occupied and their attention off of the important stuff, just like we do here.
Yeah, but the gravity issue,
that was neat. I had never thought of that before, but I wonder what they would do to try to compensate some for that.
No idea. And it's not just the ball travel in Martian gravity, but think of the muscle and bone atrophy.
Yeah.
On humans, it's like how are they even going to be able to play on Earth? And that's one of the things that they kind of glitch in Bab 5 in general.
Yeah.
But hey, they're not going to be any worse than the Cubs, so who am I to complain?
Really? You think the Cubs are bad?
Says this one Cardinals fan.
I had some advance Cubs World Series tickets for you, Raul.
Right. Yeah, for what century?
Yeah, really.
Keep in mind, I'm down here I'm down here in St. Louis, so.
Right. No, I mean, well, think about baseball over the past. We've had the pine tar thing. We've had, they have to have heavier bats because the pitching is this way, and then they have to do something with the ball because the hitters are hitting too much. They're always trying to figure out how to get this game balanced.
Yep.
And the gravity issue would be something else. I mean, could you imagine a game on the moon? The center field fence would be 5 miles from the plate.
Yeah, Matt Holliday would be hitting escape velocity.
Yeah, for sure. So at any rate, Garibaldi, he kind of takes a neutral track on this thing.
Right.
And Ramirez and Franklin make a little bet. 30 credits.
Mm-hmm.
So
on the outcome. Yep.
Yes.
Now, we next hit one of my favorite scenes in the series.
Okay.
We're in CNC. Sheridan launches with his wing to go do that little investigation.
Right.
And we get one of the very rare correct views of space from CNC.
Uh-huh.
You notice in most of the show, the stars are static.
Right.
For this one shot, for whatever reason, they decided to spend the budget, and the stars are in motion.
Uh-huh.
And they're a little off-center, lopsided in motion around the center of rotation.
Mm-hmm.
It is a beautiful shot. It might make you a little dizzy, but it's a beautiful shot, and I love it.
Yeah.
Of course, that's too expensive for them to do that all the time, but still,
Right.
I think it's great to see it.
Yep. And Susan and Sheridan exchange words, of course.
Yep.
But little comic moment there. But, it sounded natural.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. So it looks like we have heretofore unknown race.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And like we already mentioned, like I said, it appears to be some sort of organic tech.
Yeah. And it takes out 2 Star Furies, damages 1, and almost gets Sheridan.
Yeah, he manages to eject before it blows.
Yeah.
Now, we're hearing about the shadows and all of this, but at this point, at least, there's no indication that there's a connection.
Well, yeah. And, there is an indication that there is not a connection because somebody survived.
Mm-hmm.
If it had been shadows, nobody would have survived.
Right.
They'd have been cheap.
Well, not necessarily the shadow race, but some race is following or connected to them.
Oh, that could be too, because as we know, there are those in existence.
Right, and we've already seen that in earlier.
Yeah, and as I said before, we see this ship this time, and we don't see it again.
No, as far as this particular race is, that's it. And Straczynski actually mentions that.
Uh-huh.
There are more important shadow races or shadow affiliates,
right,
to occupy our time.
Yeah. So Ramirez gets a report from his ship that his
not good.
That he's got a radiation leak. It is 35% above norm and rising.
He knows he's dead,
and he's done for.
Right. But he is still trying to get word back to the station about the captain.
Yes, which reminds me of something I've been seeing on Facebook lately. That there's a new meme going around where everybody is getting in on this. You have a picture of Ramirez, and it says, "Knows he's dead, still does his job."
Yeah.
So,
while all this is going on, Haig is rather worried.
Oh yeah.
Apparently, he knows Sheridan's reputation fairly well, and he knows Sheridan.
Right.
So this is something that strikes him as extremely out of character.
Yeah. Well, and Sheridan is not, he's a risk taker, but he's not an unreasonable risk taker, at least at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll find out a little later exactly why Haig is so worried.
Right.
To lose Sheridan, because he's going to play a very important part.
Now, his visit does fit in with what Sheridan had said, low profile private visit.
Yeah. And Haig himself actually says he doesn't care for all that pomp and everything.
Right.
But then again, as you say, the reason for his visit may have required low profile. He doesn't have any aides with him. He doesn't have any kind of guard whatsoever. Yeah.
And now we get to probably what I will call the price of my beautiful CNC shot. Sheridan's prison.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. It's a cheap throw together set. Lots of saran wrap, burlap, creepy lighting, and plastic tubing.
Yeah.
But you know what? It worked.
Yeah, it did.
It did what it needed to do.
Yeah.
And it's actually not the cheapest set on the show.
Well, yeah, and you're going to add some cost with that CGI apparatus coming down out of the ceiling too.
Oh yeah, because in 1995 that was very expensive work.
Yes.
But like I said, it's not the cheapest set in the show. We get to the cheapest set of the show in the very next scene.
Okay.
Delenn going to the Great Council. Black room, black drapes, spotlights.
9 lights.
9 lights. Well, 10 if you count the center.
There are 9 lights. Okay, but
yeah.
Yeah. And she does the routine that calls the council together, I am gray and all that, so forth and so on. And nobody shows up with the exception of one.
Yeah. And he informs her that she is not considered an equal anymore.
No, that was harsh.
Yeah, because of the change.
Yeah. I thought, when the last time that those two encountered each other, I thought he was very, very nice to her. But, wow.
What I have seen is he has his professional side and his personal side.
Yeah.
Remember, he was harsh with her before from his professional perspective, yet on the other hand, he was the one who gave her the triluminary, right?
Yes, he was.
So,
But yeah, I just thought that that was a real rapid slap in the face. There was no deliberation about it.
Right.
The decision had been made,
and she wasn't given an opportunity to justify or defend, and now she's at the point of just trying to stay on BAP 5.
Yeah, and then the thing of it is okay. She was supposed to have waited, but till when was she supposed to wait until? And the result would have been the same.
True.
I mean, she still would have been half human, half Minbari.
Or do they just keep waiting and waiting and waiting until it's too late to do anything? Because we know there's influences even amongst the Minbari.
Oh, yeah.
By the shadows. So.
Yeah.
Now, here's the real question. Who replaces her?
Yeah, we find out about that in just a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Babylon 5, we'll leave it short. They know something is very, very wrong.
Yep, commander's not nearby, something is not right. So we switch back to the alien ship, and Sheridan fights with a Drazi, who has some sort of apparatus on his head.
Plastered to his face, and pipes are vicious.
Yeah, they are. And the Drazi, they are an aggressive race anyway, but this one, he does not seem to want to fight that much.
No.
He seems like it's really forced.
It's forced on him, and Sheridan does not want to kill the Drazi. In fact, it almost seems like the Drazi throws him, the pipes are sharpened at one end.
Yes.
And it almost seems like the Drazi throws himself on the pipe.
Yeah, that happened so darn fast. I went back and looked at it several times, and it definitely did look like an accident.
And
yeah.
As soon as that fight's over, there's a Narn in the room. This one actually has a sword, not a pipe.
Yeah.
And at least in this case, Sheridan does manage to avoid killing him.
Yeah. Yep. Hits him, apparently breaks a couple of ribs, and down he goes. At this point in the show, I kind of started wondering what's the point? Where are we going with this alien abduction story?
Mm-hmm.
The entire trope for this was different than what we're used to with an abduction thing.
Yeah, it's usually medical experiments.
Yeah. Well, this is more of a...
This is more of how much torture can they take, how well can they fight.
Yes, it's more of a test of endurance and strength and so forth and so on.
A test of threat, maybe?
Yeah, but the thing of it is you remember there was a court scene several episodes ago where they were talking about abductions. Someone abducted, and a Gray abducted somebody's...
Yes. Though apparently that was pointed out to Straczynski.
Yeah.
And he had commented that, yeah, they're related, but they're different. In particular, the differences in the eyes.
Okay.
I think it's in red eyes versus black eyes.
Ah.
So
okay.
there's a similarity, there is a connection, but they're not the same.
Okay.
Ramirez does get back, and at least he was able to get some useful information back. He doesn't make it, but the information that he has on his fighter does make it back.
Yeah, which is very helpful. But they still don't know where to look for these guys. And
Nope.
The last time we saw the ship, before it reached its home world, it was still in hyperspace.
Right. Yeah, this is starting to make finding a needle in a haystack easy in comparison.
Yeah.
Delenn makes her case to the Great Council.
Yeah. And Naroon once again slaps her down big time.
Yeah, we find out who her replacement is. It is Naroon.
Yeah, and she just goes nuts.
Well, the whole balance is thrown out. It was 3 of 3.
Yeah.
So now the Great Council has 4 of the warrior cast.
Yeah, and don't understand how they would allow that to happen.
I think, well, obviously the entire Warrior cast would be in favor of that.
Oh, well, yeah. Wouldn't any cast like to have their majority?
I doubt if anyone from the religious cast would be in favor of it, for obvious reasons. But without Delenn, there's only 2 of them voting out of the 8 remaining,
Yeah.
and that means they had to convince at least 2 of the worker cast that if the war is actually coming, they need the warrior leadership.
Yeah. And you know something? As far as Nerun is concerned, if there was ever any respect, if he ever had any respect for Delenn, he has none now.
No, not when he finds out the truth.
He basically calls her trash.
Yep. And, well, at least one good thing, from Delenn's perspective is that Nerun's quite happy to send her back to Babylon 5.
Oh, yeah. Well, and as he said, don't come back.
Right. Now, we talked about consequences earlier. The council, they made their choice, and now they are very badly out of balance. So what's going to be coming from that as far as consequences?
Well, as we learned earlier from Delenn, when the council agrees on something, it's not good.
Right. Kind of the old idea that the government that governs best governs least.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yep.
She'll be heading back to Babylon 5.
Yeah.
Back on the alien ship, we find out that this Narn does have some English in his vocabulary.
Yes.
And Sheridan is busy focusing on escaping.
Yeah, trying to find some way out.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have to give Straczynski a little thank you. And this is one of those little subtle things, but I'm sorry, but I got to bring it up. Usually when someone passes out like the Narn did there, they have to go out of their way. And, I can't remember what I was watching that brought this to my head, but they usually will have to go out of their way to assume that we're not smart enough to figure out that when Sheridan checks the pulse and just kind of has that little motion of relief, he doesn't have to tell the audience that, gee, he's still alive.
Yeah. Yeah,
we
know
you
that.
Know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking.
It brings up one of the things that I've always really kind of liked about this show, and that's the way it respects the audience's intelligence.
Right.
And it does it in big ways, and it also does it in little ways like this.
Mm-hmm. Now, our alien hosts have hostile intent, okay? And the only reason I can come up with is because they're preparing for an invasion of some kind.
One of the things, I suppose it's okay popping a little bit ahead in this. One of the things that we do learn, at least if go to the Lurker's Guide, read the notes, they are one of the chaotic races. Call it, obviously they're not shadows, but they've got some affiliation connection there.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that something we've, as viewers, have figured out that it's the shadows, but these darker races are being called together. We found that out earlier in this season,
right,
with that invisible creature that was mining organs, trying to get home.
Yeah.
Where we first learned the name Zadum, I believe, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Might have. I don't. Someone correct me out there if I'm wrong. So it makes sense that they would have that hostile intent if there is that affiliation.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll come back to that hostile intent thing in a little bit.
You got it.
Right. In any case, we have a conversation. Delenn comes out of the council chamber.
Mm-hmm. Lanier refers to her as Satai.
Right. And she
corrects him.
Yep. She lets him know she is no longer Satai.
Right. This is really a tragic scene in a way.
Well, it is.
Not just because of what happens to Delenn, but the amount of foreshadowing.
Yeah. And what I really liked about especially the writing at this point is that Delenn takes the high road.
Yes.
She doesn't demean the council to him. It's just, okay,
Okay.
I've lost my spot. She doesn't express her worries about the majority she doesn't have any or express any animosity towards Neroon or Hedron for the way it was handled or anything. She just kind of says, well, these are the way things are.
Mm-hmm. We seem to have a little help coming in by virtue of General Haig here.
Yeah, that is so neat when the Agamemnon comes through.
Yeah.
And I think what really tags that big time is the music that comes along with the ship coming through the jump gate.
That martial theme.
Yes.
Yep.
I mean,
it just kind of makes it.
Yeah.
You've got that.
They play that, and this is a big thing.
Fastest ship in the area.
Yeah.
Probably one of the more powerful ships in the area, barring a Minbari cruiser.
Right. Well, and it was also one of the closest.
And one of the closest, and it just happens to be the captain's old ship.
Yeah.
So, of course, they're going to be interested in taking part.
Yeah.
Now, Sheridan's dream.
Talon is snoozing, and Sheridan kind of nods off and starts to have this weird dream.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to let you take the lead on this because I'm not much of a dream interpreter.
Oh, good heavens. I'm going to cheat. I've got the Lurker's Guide in front of me as well, so.
Ah.
I'm trying to decide. So much of this is in the visuals. There's not a lot of dialogue that really helps us here.
Right.
And I, to do a clip or not to clip, it's really just a few questions.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
let's skip the clip on this one.
Okay, yeah, I agree because it is more visual than it is anything else.
It's all the visual.
Yeah.
She's got. We started out with Ivanova. She's in quarters, hair draped, funky hairstyle.
Yeah.
Doing a little
completely different. Her hair is hanging completely off of the left side.
Right.
And I'm not following what the significance of that is just yet, but I seem to recall that that's kind of like Delen's hairstyle, isn't it?
In some ways.
Yeah.
I think it's almost like she's telling him to just shut up and listen.
Yeah.
And then she pops out with the question, "Do you know who I am?"
Yeah.
Now, if you've watched the show before, that is the Vorlon question, "Who are you?"
Ah. Okay.
Sheridan then looks off to the side, and he's seeing himself.
Yes.
On Babylon 5, looking up, there's another Sheridan.
Uh-huh.
He's in something of a different uniform, but it's another Sheridan. And then Garibaldi is there.
I think there was only one other Sheridan, wasn't there?
There's only one other Sheridan, but we see Sheridan in different. But we've got Garibaldi with a dove, bird of peace, on his shoulder, and he has one of the other few lines in the sequence where he says, "The man in between is searching for you." Different Sheridan, Garibaldi giving a warning, "The man in between is searching for you." Who is this man in between? Now, as you said, we get back to Ivanova.
Right.
She's in a basically funeral garb with the raven, bird of death, bird of war.
Uh-huh.
And that just sort of flashes by.
Yeah. And then we get Sheridan in a Psychor uniform.
Right. That's... Well, we know the Psychor is up to the ears. Is this a warning is he being warned about the Psychor? Is he being given a clue as to the importance that telepaths are going to play in this?
Yeah.
Because we'll see both of those issues come up further down the road.
Yeah. Well, we know that Psychor is a big influence on the trouble that's brewing back on Earth.
Right. In fact, we're going to get a confirmation of that, as well as an idea of the depth of this
Yes.
before the end of this episode.
Right.
But Ivanova, still in her funeral outfit, tells him, "You are the hand," which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I mean, we just had Lando's hand a couple episodes ago, reaching out from the stars.
Yeah.
But you are the hand. What? The hand as in the tool?
A tool that would guide something.
To guide something, or the tool that wields the sword?
Yeah.
I mean, it could very well be, the hand is what takes the action.
Right.
So I think it could very well be something like that.
Yeah. Then we get Kosh.
And then we get Kosh, of course.
And he wants to know, what are you doing here?
Mm-hmm. Then that is actually Sheridan asking, why are you here?
Yeah.
And Kosh tells him, we were never away.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's interesting is what he says immediately after that. For the first time, your mind is quiet enough to hear me.
Mm-hmm.
Through all of this space, this is the first that Sheridan can hear what's going on with Kosh.
Yeah.
And has Kosh been trying to reach out to him before? I know, I've mentioned earlier, not this episode, but earlier as in previous episodes. Isn't it interesting that Kosh is showing up at council meetings now that Sheridan's there?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they know the Forlans they know what's coming. They've been down this road before.
And do you notice how Kosh answered him when he asked, "Why are you here?" Kosh said, "We were never away."
Well, that, and it was more than a one-word sentence, a one-word answer.
Who is the we versus who is the we in this? Because now Sheridan asks the next question, "Why am I here?"
Yeah.
And Kosh tells him, "You have always been here."
Could that be referring to Sheridan's destiny? He was destined to be there.
Yeah, it's almost contradictory though, in a way.
Yeah.
We were never away, and you have always been here.
Yeah.
So, what's the connection between Sheridan and the Vorlons? Is Kosh including Sheridan and him when he says we? Is he talking about the Vorlon race when he says we? Is it, sort of the royal we?
Yeah.
A Gestalt we? Except he's specific that you've always been here. And where is here anyway?
Yeah.
In Kosh's mind? Because obviously it can't be on the ship.
Yeah. Well, we do find out that it is not just a dream, but it is Kosh touching Sheridan's mind.
Yeah. And we're going to see the results of this dream play out over the course of a few seasons now. Anyway, one of the more bizarre moments. And you know what? I'm going to take that back. This is probably one of the few moments that Kosh makes the most sense.
Yeah. Because he sure doesn't make much very often. That's, that's been proven.
Now, we do know from Delenn who this alien race that has Sheridan is.
Yeah.
And apparently they're called the Stribe, and apparently they've been a thorn in the side before.
Yeah. They apparently went after the Minbari.
Right.
And the Minbari spanked them pretty good.
Yeah, it seems they're not quite as tough as they appeared.
Right.
And at least Delenn knew where their homeworld was.
Mm-hmm.
So we get the attack on their ship. Now, this is the one other spot that annoys me a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Do the Stribe only have one ship?
Yeah, I gotta wonder.
Or is it the fact that, Delenn threatens them? She kind of pulls a bit of a bluff as far as Minbari.
Yeah.
And like you said, they were spanked pretty thoroughly by the Minbari before, so it could very well be that they just had a thought, well, okay, we'll let this ship go and not risk another spanking.
Yeah.
Sort of a cut their losses.
Yeah.
The other part that annoyed me, how did Talon know that was an escape pod?
I don't know, unless he took a really good guess.
Right.
He said, "There's the way out. There, that door opened. Let's go."
They might have decided to throw that one ship under the bus, but spacing the captives,
Yeah.
that was pretty evil.
Yeah, they're definitely not nice people at all.
No. Good thing Talon did recognize what the escape pod is. That almost seems like it was just contrived to get them off the ship.
Yeah.
From a story perspective.
Yep. So this is where what I said earlier comes back. I mean, they had no problem destroying this Stribe ship.
Right.
Okay.
Like I said, they weren't as tough as they seemed to be.
They didn't even put up a fight. This was I don't know. It felt almost like a throwaway plot line.
Well, part of this kind of connects to the idea of the Stribe hearing that the Minbari were involved here may have decided that the ship was expendable.
Yeah.
But
I'll tell you what, if there was any question whether they were in league with the Shadows, this would have solved that question because the Stribe are too weak.
Yeah. But that ship very well might have been something as simple as their weapons were more along the lines of something to try, as far as power is concerned.
Yeah.
To take out smaller fighters, smaller ships.
That would sure seem to be the case.
And certainly in the case because they're trying to capture the different species to study them.
Yeah. Well, and then of course they gave up awful fast, spacing the captives.
Right. So I think the more I'm thinking of it, the more I'm going with the idea that, I just think it's a matter of they were not prepared. Onesie, twosie fighters, isolated ships where they can take something on, but a whole wing of fighters, plus a fairly tough battleship with heavy weaponry, that's completely out of their league.
Yeah.
It's what the ship is. That's not what that Stribe ship was designed to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it might have just been its combat capability.
Yeah, which it didn't seem to have much of any.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we have Sheridan comes back.
Survivor's guilt.
Yeah. Ramirez was not able to make it. They were working on it, but he didn't make it. And Sheridan says it's just not fair.
And Franklin's answer kind of being maybe not an MD, but within the profession, his curt, no, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
That might have been an appropriate answer for the captain, but for an answer for one of his patients, I'm sorry, that's not the answer a doctor should give someone who is one of his patients. If that makes sense.
Well, it isn't fair. And life isn't fair.
But as a healthcare professional, part of the job is to try, especially with something as traumatic as what Sheridan's been through, fair or not.
Yeah.
You treat the whole patient. Anyway, diverted. Because we get to the real point of this scene when Sheridan leaves MedLab.
Yep.
Guess who he runs into?
Aha. Kosh is waiting for him outside.
And now we get Kosh back to being normal, meaning a complete mystery.
Yeah.
Because he just says, you have always been here.
Well, and that's the cement to let us know that it wasn't just a dream.
It was not.
It was a telepathic message from Kosh to Sheridan.
Which, of course, raises all kinds of questions in itself. How did Kosh know where he was? And, oh my God, Vorlons can send a telepathic connection that far?
Yeah. Well, Vorlons move in mysterious ways.
Yeah. Speaking of mysterious.
Yes.
In the wrap-up, though, we finally get some answers. Something that's unusual for this show at times.
Mm-hmm.
So we know John was involved in something. And it seems like Haig is working on something based on instructions or the wishes from Santiago.
Yeah.
It's like he's following orders from beyond the grave.
Well, yeah, and also Sheridan says he's not comfortable spying on these people.
Right.
So this kind of gives us a little bit of an idea of what was going on when he was taken from command of a starship which is what he wanted to do, and put in command of Babylon 5, and how he accepted it as well as he did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, John Sheridan wanted to be an explorer. He wanted to be out there moving, and here he's put on this stationary thing.
And he had a reputation as a butt kicker.
Yeah.
Which is why Clark put him on Babylon 5.
Yeah.
So it was almost like his position, even though that may not match what his actual personality is, other than the fact that, yes, when he needs to, he can kick butt. But it's like Haig and, by proxy, I guess, Santiago from Beyond the Grave kind of recruited him or had him in position, just because of how he's perceived.
Yeah.
As part of why and speaking of which, we do get it definitely identified as Clark as the bad guy in this.
Yes. And then Haig seems to be setting Sheridan up to be an important part of what sounds a lot like a military coup getting ready to take place.
Yeah, except has the coup already occurred, and is Haig's actual objective to undo that? Because we find out that it is Psychor that's pulling the strings and choreographing the whole show.
Right. And Psychor is trying to take over. We know that from that newspaper that Garibaldi was reading.
Right. And they're up to their ears, and it's much more than a simple political thing. And from the sound of it, it may not be simply that Psychor is wanting or trying to take over. They already are in power,
yes,
at least by proxy.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, is Haig conducting a military coup, or are they actually fulfilling their oath, which is one of the things he points out. Their oath is to defend the earth against all threats, to use the American oath, all threats foreign domestic.
Right.
All threats foreign and domestic, as Haig puts it, internal and external threats.
Yes. And that is exactly right. And the Psychor is definitely a domestic threat.
So here's the interesting question. Have they crossed the line of treason yet? Or is this just insubordination or conduct unbecoming, or is it something in between? And JP, I would love to get your feedback on this one.
Well, you know what? I think it's kind of a matter of a point of view, because Santiago's death was a treasonous act in itself. So when you are trying to bring someone who has treasonously, if that's even a word, taken control to justice, yeah, from that person's point of view, it would be treason.
Who gets to write the history books is the real question then.
Yes, exactly.
Is Haig and Sheridan, and apparently since the command staff, once Sheridan fills him in, are all behind him, are they patriots or are they traitors?
Well, I would have to call them patriots.
Indeed. But
yeah,
as we discussed in the very beginning of this episode, there are certainly consequences.
Oh, yeah, there will be. Consequences don't care about right or wrong. They just happen,
Says a very wise man on the other end of the Skype connection from me.
Based on, every decision a person makes is going to affect the rest of their lives.
True.
You take, for instance, back in 1993, I decided to stop working for a living and go to college. So that was definitely a positive thing, because the consequences are good. But, that could have gone badly as well. Who knows?
Uh-huh. And, there was a point in the early 80s where I decided to take a different path and go into medical school.
Mm-hmm.
And the consequences of that one decision the impact that it has been huge, not just on me personally, but, in general.
Oh, yeah. So there is our episode.
This was definitely a fun episode. I don't know why I always go into it with a little bit of trepidation, but it never fails. I come out of it. Wow, this was a good one.
Well, yeah, and just one closing point for me, I just did not get what the relevance of this abduction story was, though. It seemed to be outside of everything, other than to set Sheridan up to get a message from Kosh.
Well, not just get the message from Kosh. And this is why, if you remember when we started this episode, I was really hesitant to call it an arc episode, and I was more calling it a pivot episode, because it wasn't so much of the arc itself, the main story, but we get all of the background information from Haig. We have everything happening with Delenn and the Minbari. We have the incidents with Kosh, and after this, there's just a shift in the direction for everyone.
Yeah.
So it pivots the story rather than has any big grand whammies. And, let's be honest, a lot of the stuff that we got from Kosh and a lot of the stuff that we got from Haig, people had been theorizing about already.
Oh, yeah.
So it wasn't huge, stunning revelations. It was more of, aha, there's your answer.
Yeah.
Confirmations.
Yeah. Okay. A summing up and getting ready to move forward, which seems to be what a lot of episodes do.
Well, it certainly makes forward motion in the following episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, next week, Acts of Sacrifice.
Yeah.
It focuses a lot on just some of the nuances of the war.
Yeah.
And sort of the personal cost, I guess, in some ways.
Yeah.
It's kind of tragic in some regards. We see some of Jakar's actions coming back. We see more consequences.
Yeah.
And of course, the main part of the show, what I'll just leave it as boom chakalaka.
Okay.
Well, any closing thoughts on this one?
No, it was a good, solid episode, except for, as I said, the Sheridan abduction thing kind of confused me a little bit. I think that could have been made somewhat more interesting. But other than that, yeah, we got a lot of, not some boom, but we got some interesting
firecrackers.
Yeah,
Pops.
little pops here and there. Delenn getting kicked off the council, Naroon taking over. Oh boy.
Yes.
Yeah. But I like Naroon anyway. I like him anyway.
He was always very much a favorite character of a lot of people.
Oh gosh, that voice of his is incredible.
Yeah, John Vickery's voice. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh. Are you ready to say good night to everyone, sir?
I am. I think we've done this episode justice.
Absolutely. And as you said, there was no boom today.
No boom today.
But probably a boom tomorrow.
Oh, there's always a boom tomorrow.
Indeed.
Yep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night now.
Podcast terminated. Thank you for listening to the Babylon Project podcast. You can email Raul and Jim at the Babylon Project podcast @gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook at the Babylon Project Podcast. On the internet, we are at babylonprojectpodcast.wordpress.com. To subscribe to the podcast, you can find us on iTunes, or you can subscribe to the RSS feed on the webpage.